Hello out there. You are listening to The Local Lens, the podcast from the Powell County Health Department and Kentucky Rio, where we go inside our community's experience with the drug epidemic. Our show is coming to you from Stanton, Kentucky, a small town nestled at the foothills of Appalachia. And our show is all about sharing different perspectives around this overdose epidemic that we've found ourselves in over the past 2 decades. And this episode that you're listening to now is part 2 of a 2-part series with Eastern Kentucky Recovery, which is a clinic based out of Winchester, Kentucky, about 20 minutes away from Stanton. And we wanted to go in this clinic because they do a lot of stuff to specifically try offering as much as they can to people battling with addiction. So we're going to start off this episode with giving a brief summary of who this group is and what their approach to healthcare is like, and then we're going to be taking a deep dive into medically assisted treatment, which is somewhat of a controversial topic. Now, to put it briefly, medically assisted treatment is what it sounds like. You're using medicine to assist the treatment of addiction, and it's pretty effective. So let's see how these guys do it. This is The Local Lens. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm your host, Nate Brooks. These are our people, using our voices, telling our stories, because no one sees it like we do.
Okay, I'm Tracy Fryman, owner of Eastern Kentucky Recovery and also Central Kentucky Recovery, based out of Cynthiana. I am an RN by profession. I started my RN career with an inpatient facility. At the time, it was called Stoner Creek in Paris. Been working with the addiction for probably about 11 years now.
So I'm Scott Seitz. I'm a family practice nurse practitioner. I've been practicing a little over 20 years as a nurse practitioner. I've been in the industry for 35 years, working with addictions inside or around addictions for the last 16 years. I joined Eastern Kentucky Recovery and eventually Central Kentucky Recovery to bring in the primary care component and to treat substance abuse, because we believe in the holistic approach, and we can make a difference one-on-one, but we'll make a difference exponentially when we work together.
And this holistic approach is absolutely foundational to their whole service there. They are paying just as much attention to the physical health as they are to the mental health, and they're offering as much in-house as they can. And the reason Tracy started with this is because she saw a need for it. She was working at an inpatient care center, and they saw that there was nowhere for people to go to continue the help after they left.
We were trying to discharge these patients out, and there was no outpatient services in that area. It was the point that, what are we going to do with these patients? They have no treatment after they leave us.
So she went and started one. She went and started this place that could offer the treatment necessary after those initial stages. So that is where we are right now, is the place that she started. It is Eastern Kentucky Recovery. She also has Central Kentucky Recovery. And this place offers so much stuff under its one roof.
So we started basically with the counseling, and then we were looking for other ways to treat. Counseling sometimes doesn't cure-all. It's not a cure-all. And they only get out of it what they put into it. If they're going to sit and talk to you honestly about what's going on, then they're going to get a good response from it. If they're not, then you have to look for other resources and other ways to assist that patient.
So the main other way that we're going to be looking at in this episode is using medicine, medically assisted treatment, which we're going to refer to quite a bit as M.A.T therapy. There is a good bit of hesitation for people to use this kind of therapy and this kind of treatment, and there's quite a bit of stigma around this, and it may be for good reason, because the medical field, as a lot of people know now, the medical field has a lot to do with how we got ourselves into such a bad opiate crisis. Here to explain that a little bit more is Brenda Drennan from Shepherd Shelter Ross Rehab.
The pain medicine came from the recommendation of people should not have pain. They should have their pain treated. And so we saw pain overtreated. So you just got all the pain medicine you need because you shouldn't have any pain. That's not realistic. Us normal people have pain. So you gave them a pain-free life, and then that's what they expect when they experience pain. They want it gone. They don't want a 2 or 3 on a scale from 1 to 10. They want 0. And so, because that's what they've experienced and that's what their body expects. So, but the OxyContin and all of that started with, honestly, the medical profession coming out and saying all patients deserve to be pain-free. And so they did that. And we created an addiction to pain medicine.
So there is this tricky history between addiction and the medical field that is messy and ugly, but you have to trust that the medical field has tried to improve itself on this, and that the people that are working in this space really do have the best interest of people at heart. And that's really the big reason why we wanted to do this deep dive into M.A.T, is because we want to show people that this stuff is effective when used right. So we want to show you how it's used. And one of the big medicines that you use for this is called buprenorphine, which basically what that does is it lowers the impacts of withdrawal. So people will take buprenorphine and it lowers the crave for drugs, essentially. Suboxone is another medicine you're going to hear a lot about in this, and that essentially does the same thing. So these are pills, but there are also injections, and one of the kinds of injections is called Vivitrol, and you're going to hear about that some as well. So the focus of this episode, though, is going to be on the use of these and how these are used and why these are used. If you want to know more about the medicines themselves, though, then I recommend that you go listen to our episode with Dr. Cassis. That episode focuses more on the science and the neurology of this stuff, where this episode is more about the practice of using it.
Let's look at M.A.T therapy. Medication-assisted treatment is to help you manage a problem, okay? And there's various forms of management. Some people will take Suboxone, for instance, just so they're not using heroin. Now, it's a safety, because the likelihood of overdosing is pretty slim. So there's that aspect of it. Some people will use Suboxone or Vivitrol or any of the other treatments as a bridge to get to the next level of sobriety so that they can come off of those meds and live a new, changed life. Other people need treatment for a long period of time for various reasons. So it depends on what the motive is when they come through the door. If it's, I can't get any more heroin and I need to have something so I don't go into withdrawals, then they want buprenorphine products. And they might not come back. And as a provider, if the motive is I want Suboxone, say, just because I can't get heroin, do I say no to that? No, not necessarily, because what I'm trying to do is make a relationship. And if I bring them back on a weekly basis and they see me and they see what sobriety can give them, then maybe I can sell the other services. Then maybe I can sell this as a health issue now. There's nothing worse than trying to ask somebody that has a clouded mind, and I don't care whether it's substances or depression or whatever. If their mind is clouded, it's hard to get them to see something different, no matter what you're trying to get them to see.
Now, using this medicine is not the final goal. It's just a step in the process. So this is a clip from Brenda Drennan from Shepherd Shelter Ross Rehab.
I look at it as a tool to help you take that alcohol and opiate off the table so that you can concentrate on your treatment, which be therapy or whatever. It's not enough by itself. It's not a one-shot wonder. It doesn't do anything other than block the drug. That's what it does. But once we've blocked that drug, then you can open your mind up to outpatient therapy, inpatient therapy, whatever it's going to take to keep you sober and get into that normal life. And then once it becomes habit, then you don't need the shot anymore later on. But it's a tool, and that's all it is.
Not a crutch.
Should not be.
Yeah.
If they expect it just to fix it, it's not going to. There's not one thing that fixes addiction.
So a big part of Eastern Kentucky Recovery's approach to treatment is keeping people coming back in consistently. So they're using the medicine to help get the minds unclouded long enough so that they can see what the new route under recovery is going to be.
But what keeps people coming back the second time after the first time here? Why couldn't they just also not come to this appointment here?
I would say, and I'm just going to be frank about it, for the medication. Until they're involved with the counselors and in the other kind of treatment, they come back for the medication. We can do same-day appointments here. Now our psychiatrist is here just about every day. Scott is now certified to do the buprenorphine products, so he can see patients on a daily basis. And I think once they get started and they're here, then they develop a relationship with the staff, with everybody, and then they feel more comfortable once they're here. And that gives them the opportunity to open up about different things that's going on with them.
So that's what I'm going to call our summary of part 1 with Eastern Kentucky Recovery. Now we're going to start getting into the weeds a little bit more and talking about how they are using medicine and how important that is to their approach to helping people with their recoveries. We're going to be pulling out some quotes from some previously released episodes, and we're going to be hearing from a lot of people on this because this is kind of one of the most exciting parts of recovery right now. This is incredible science that's coming about, so let's go on and get into it.
Coming from the rehab side, I get clients all the time that they only use meth. They only use meth. They've never used anything else, but they're coming up positive for opiates and fentanyl because they're putting that in the, which is scary. It's really scary because if somebody doesn't mix it right, somebody could die from that. It's frightening what's happening out on the streets, which is another reason why sometimes you have to think, maybe, because I know there's a stigma with buprenorphine products. Maybe you need to think a little bit differently about buprenorphine products. When I first got started in addiction, I didn't like it. It was like trading one addiction for another. But now I can see where there's major needs. I'd rather have somebody on Suboxone than getting some of this stuff off the streets, especially with the chemists that are out there mixing and doing stuff.
Yeah, the stigmatism with Suboxone has come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
Because, just like what you said, when I started doing it, I didn't have a preference on Suboxone. Hey, it's helping these people. They're not sick. They're coming in here. When you have a patient walk in 1 week, look like death warmed over, sold her car to get there. She was pregnant. She got there and got started on the medication. The next week she comes back in and you don't recognize her. That is the part you want to see because she's doing so well and stuff, and she's doing really good. So a lot of people don't see that. It's just like you said, one drug for another. And some of the people that say that are not the ones that have lived or have dealt with addiction.
Right.
And this reminds me of a quote from Alex Ellswick. We did a couple episodes with him in the past. This guy is in long-term recovery himself. His addiction pushed him into homelessness even. And then he's turned things around since then, and he now holds a PhD from the University of Kentucky and works at the university studying addiction and some of the related stuff about that.
The evidence on medication is actually really, 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 really strong. Really strong. And it's really hard to be a scientist. So my training is about how do I look at research, tell if it's good research, tell what it means. That's what my job is. I spent years training for this. And to see that there's such strong evidence for medication and there's so much stigma around it and so much conversation, like people are just substituting one addiction for another or whatever it is. I can tell you this, we're in the midst of an opioid overdose epidemic, losing people on a daily basis. There is only one treatment of all the treatments available. There's only one that effectively reduces your risk of dying, and that's medication, right? At a time when people are dying in droves, that sounds like a pretty important medication, right? I'm not saying everybody should be on it. I'm saying it needs to be available to everyone. And so like people ask me about my experience with medication. The stigma was even worse 10 years ago, to the point where it really wasn't even offered to me as a legitimate option. So the first time it was presented to me, it was talked about by a healthcare provider as if it were like an alternative therapy.
Yeah,
like
go
they're like
to Mexico and get this.
Exactly. So he's like, well, you can do inpatient or outpatient, and then you could do this medication. And I thought, like, is it like acupuncture? Like, what are we? It's some strange. And then imagine my surprise when I find out that that's actually the gold standard for treating the problem that I have, and nobody even presented as an option, right?
So we have 2 episodes with this guy, and really, he's got an incredible story, and he's so smart, so I really recommend you guys go listen to those 2 episodes. But here we are back with Scott Seitz.
I know of a gentleman who has about 10 years, maybe a little bit more than 10 years in addiction, has been through lots of jails and lots of forced sobriety, but is out for a week and relapses every single time. He was finally introduced to buprenorphine, and he now has a full-time job. He's back in his daughter's life. He's actually getting interested in politics. I mean, it has totally transformed him, and to the point where he's like, I don't know that I ever want to come off of this medicine.
And I'm sorry for interrupting so much in this, but this sounds a lot like something that Dr. Cassis said with us many months ago in one of our first few episodes ever released. Dr. Cassis is an internist who specializes in this medicine based in Stanton.
If the patient is taking it right, they're not abusing it, and they take just their dose, and it helps them to function normal, go back to school or to work, have a normal family life, why do you care how fast you need to get them off it?
Yeah.
Let them slowly, as comfortably as they could, wean slowly with the help of a physician and supervision. And anytime you feel that there is a risk of relapse, change the course.
A very important part of that is the supervision of a physician. There is a lot of interaction between the patient and the physician in this kind of setup, and Eastern Kentucky Recovery really pays a lot of attention to that. So here we are back with Scott.
I've actually had a physician say to me, if you've got a diabetic that's on insulin, are you going to take their insulin away from him? No,
Right.
I'm not. So, we do need to think a little bit differently. We've got a drug that really will make a difference for people.
Yeah.
Now, over time, we should wean off if that's possible. But there probably is going to be a small percentage of the population that still may need that longer. And I think this young man that I'm referring to will probably need it for a long time. But he's got a very productive life now.
Well, and it's individualized. So it's between the patient and the physician
Right.
on what they choose to do, on how long they choose to stay on the medication. It's not something that I can dictate because I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question. It's between them, and if they need to be on it for longer, so be it.
Yeah.
But we go off with the intent that this is a 12 to 18 month.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at making major changes. If we say, well, you can just have this for the rest of your life, well, why would I do all the other things that takes care of this? So you got to balance both sides. So the goal is 12 to 18 months, and that's where we're going to go. And if we need something more, we can look at that in a different light.
And we are a taper program. We're not meant to be a lifelong thing. And we've had one lady come in and say, I've been on this for 10 years. You will not be on it for 10 years here. What do you mean? You will taper here at some point. We don't want you to stay on it for a lifelong thing. You need to take the resources that we have, follow what the physicians are teaching you to do, and you will be off of it. We can transition to the Vivitrol injection. If they get down to a certain point to where I don't really want to be on Suboxone anymore, but I don't want to be on, taking meds. The Vivitrol's worked really well. We've done that with a few patients, and then they just go on their little merry way.
One of the things that I challenge some folks with is taking that pill or 2 pills or whatever every day, once or twice a day or whatever. Some of addiction is just having that hand-mouth that I have to do that every single day. And so sometimes people are afraid to wean off or come off or whatever because they're not sure that they trust themselves. So oftentimes we'll look at one of the injectables, and I tell them it's kind of like a car. You have a car, you have car insurance. You have it, so hopefully you won't need it. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And so sometimes they're like, okay, that makes good sense, and now I can wean off of the daily and get onto an injectable, take that a month or 2, see that they're doing very well, and then they can come off of that.
And what's the effect of the injectable?
it lasts a whole month.
Yeah.
So they don't have to do anything except get a shot.
Yeah.
I still do their counseling.
Yeah, they still do their counseling and things like that, but they don't have to take that medicine every single day.
And it's doing the thing where it fills in the opioid craving.
Yes.
It still has a
Yeah.
blocker in it.
Yeah.
So that they won't have the cravings.
Okay.
And it's an extended release. So they gradually get, it's like a little capsule. You can feel it into the skin, so it gradually releases. It can stay in the Sublocade can stay in their system for quite a long time after taking an injection. The pamphlet says up to a year. But then again, it depends on how their body processes the medication too. So
I can imagine you could get some crazy stories happening dealing with injections too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, because what I'm thinking about is like kind of where like prescription drugs started being, people figured out pretty easily how to abuse those.
Mm-hmm.
But for an injection, if you can feel it in your skin, then like, do you ever have anybody that like digs into their skin and pulls it out or anything?
never had that. I've not
Okay,
seen
that's
it.
good.
No.
That's good. It feels like
Yeah.
science fiction-y to me.
No.
Like, okay.
We've not
Yeah.
had that.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't jinx them.
Yeah. I will
Yeah, knock on
say,
wood.
you know, sometimes people can be quite creative and find ways to do things that I never would have thought.
Yeah.
But I don't think that'd be possible in any way, shape, or form with the medicines, the injectable medicines. The Sublocade, the buprenorphine product that's injectable, is sub-Q, so it goes in your belly. Vivitrol is in the muscle, so it goes in your hind end.
All right.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to get back there and get it out.
Yeah, at least yourself.
Yes. So, but both of those products are awesome for somebody who just needs to see if they're ready to trust themselves. Or if they have a tough time meeting the requirements. Some people, their jobs are such that they can't get here or things like that. So sometimes it's easier to get them onto an injectable so that they don't have to worry about getting to the pharmacy. They don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And then bridge to a wean quickly from there.
So what would be the next step after the injectable then? If somebody's goal was to become completely sober with it, what would be the next step after Vivitrol?
After Vivitrol, we don't have a next
There
step.
isn't.
Other
Okay, so
than-
that's like the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Other
done.
than if they, continue the counseling. Even though, they're not taking the medication, they continue the counseling. 'Cause that's the additional support at the end. Because once they realize that they're, I'm not on any meds anymore, opens up a whole new perspective for them. So that would offer them a way to be able to help work through some of that stuff.
And that's more maintaining
Yes,
as well.
yes.
So, all right, so just correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm having fun thoughts with what to do with all the M.A.T stuff. But so the process with the M.A.T goes like Suboxone, which those are the more daily pills, and then you decrease your dosage on that until you switch to the injection. And then do you decrease the dosage on that as well, or is that just kind of like you do it less and less until...
The Sublocade injection, you would just not get another injection. The body will taper itself off with the Sublocade injection.
Okay.
So, it starts out, if you start the injection, you get 2 months. There's 2 loading doses of 300 milligrams. At the 3rd month, you get the 100 milligrams. So you continue to take that. But if you decide, hey, I want to try this without it, you will not get another injection. The body will taper itself off of that medication.
It's
Where it's
slow
extended
released,
release.
extended or time released. So even though the medicine is in the subcutaneous tissue, you're not absorbing all of it at one time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
constantly absorbing over 28 to 35 days in its fullest form.
Okay.
The Vivitrol, you just won't get another injection.
Right.
Yeah. That's pretty incredible.
So the difference between those two products is because buprenorphine,
Sublocade and Vivitrol?
right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
you're still dealing with the opioid side of things with buprenorphine, where you're not with Vivitrol. So your body will kind of absorb and wean down and slowly come off of. People that abruptly stop Suboxone or any of the buprenorphine products can go through some withdrawal. There's no withdrawal with Vivitrol. Your body just doesn't have anything there after that.
Okay.
So there is another version of buprenorphine products. I had one physician at one time that was certified to do it, and it's the implant. And it lasts for 6 months.
6 months. Okay. That's a long time.
Nobody here does it. Has been certified. We didn't, when she was certified, we didn't have anybody that was interested in it at the time or even thinking about it. So, but it's there.
Who would that be helpful to specifically? Like, what would be some characteristics of this person?
To be honest, I really don't know, because it's a long-term extension for 6 months. The only scenario that I can imagine is somebody that is diverting very heavily, somebody that's inpatient, or it could have been used in the corrections area if somebody comes in, as far as that, to help with that. That's a medication. I know it's there. I know she was certified, but I haven't studied it like I've looked at the others, and stuff to do. I just know that it is available if somebody's certified to do it.
Yeah.
And then you can only give it for 1 year, like 6 months and 6 months. It goes like the birth control in the arm, and it's an implant.
Okay.
So I know it's done up in Cincinnati, but it's not made it this area
I
yet.
can't think of
There's really
clientele
not.
that we try to wrap our arms around. I don't think anybody would want that or be a candidate for that. And the big reason that I think that way is you plant that and you're gone for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's this problem is complicated like diabetes, and it's not something that just goes away with an implant. And if you look at the history of addictions, we started having problems in the 1800s when morphine came out. If you look at the history, heroin was actually introduced as a treatment for morphine addiction in the turn of the century. But we really haven't changed the way we treat addiction. And I think that's because it's not just a medical problem. And so frequently, medicine says, let's fix it medically. And it's not. We have to treat it holistically, which is, again, another reason why I'm here at this clinic, because that's what we're trying to do. And I think we're going to see a bigger success rate at people overcoming that problem. We don't do that. We don't fix those issues. The patient does that. We just help guide them. And sometimes it takes a medicine to help guide them through that. But us writing a prescription doesn't fix the problem. It's them taking the prescription and working through whatever it is. I can write somebody insulin, but if they're eating McDonald's 14 times a day or some kind of other fast food 14 times a day,
Which
the
is
insulin's
so
not going to
much
fix.
Come on, who's doing that?
But I mean, it
14
happens.
times a week.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But still, there's got to be, you got to look at everything that's involved. That insulin's not going to fix that problem if that diet is not going to fix it. And so neither is Suboxone or neither is Vivitrol or other. There's so much more. And
the mental health side of this is something that needs to be looked at too, quite a bit. It's like you said, you give them the medicine, but there's other underlying issues there that started this. So you have to, that's where we come in at, the holistic approach with the psychiatrists on staff and stuff like that, and our counselors and different things like that. So you have to look at it. Once the addiction is stabilized with medicine, then the other stuff starts to come about.
So it seems like medicine is used to open up the door initially, and then all the big changes can start to follow. Now, we're going to head on into some closing statements.
no matter what your ability to pay, what your socioeconomic status is, whatever the issue is, we won't turn anybody away. So our doors are always open. If anybody needs services, come through the door. We'll help one way or another. Maybe it has nothing to do with addiction. Maybe there's a mental health component, or maybe there's a physical component and you just can't find some place to go. Come through our doors. We'll help get you where you need to be. We are treating everybody 100% as best we can, no matter what the issue is. That's probably what I would say.
Okay.
The only thing that I would say is I don't have a preference on how you get clean and sober, whether it be with me or anybody else, as long as you make it happen on your time. Doesn't have to be here, just as long as it's somewhere.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. We know this was a lot of information coming at you today, and it takes time to process all of this. So Give it a few listens if you need to. I hope you find us online. You can stream us online and all of our past episodes as well. So I'm going to thank a few people. Thanks to Scott and Tracy for being on the episode, and also thanks to Brenda, Alex, and Dr. Cassis for chipping in many months ago. And I would also like to thank WSKV for broadcasting our show, and also the Powell County Health Department and Kentucky Rio for letting this show be a thing still. This is Nate Brooks. You've been listening to The Local Lens. These are our people, using our voices, telling our stories, because no one sees it like we do.